Your brain's primary mission has always been survival, not happiness, fulfillment, or confidence. From the moment you were born, your brain has been scanning the world for danger, assessing threats, and preparing you to react long before you have time to think. This ancient survival system kept your ancestors alive, but today it often becomes your greatest barrier. When your brain senses the slightest hint of uncertainty or discomfort, it doesn't evaluate the opportunity, it triggers alarms. It whispers warnings, amplifies fear, and pulls you back to familiar patterns, even if those patterns are unhealthy or self-destructive. This is why you sometimes sabotage your own progress. Your brain is not trying to ruin your life. It simply hasn't yet learned the difference between a real danger and a change that could elevate your life. Most of the time, your brain's instincts are automatic, meaning they operate beneath your awareness. You don't consciously decide to doubt yourself before a new project. You don't intentionally choose fear when you want to step outside your comfort zone. These reactions are programmed responses from a time when discomfort equaled death. The brain learned that new environments, new risks, or unfamiliar situations could threaten survival. Today, those same mechanisms activate when you want to start a business, speak in public, pursue a relationship, learn a skill, or break an old habit. Your brain thinks it's protecting you, even when it's holding you back. When you tell yourself you can't do something, or when you procrastinate, or when you talk yourself out of a dream, these behaviors are not personal flaws. They are mental reflexes created by millions of years of evolution. The brain prefers the familiar because it perceives predictability as safety. It prefers the comfortable because effort once meant burning precious calories needed for survival. It prefers the past because the past is already known, and the unknown feels dangerous. This is why personal growth feels uncomfortable. You are challenging a system designed to keep you exactly where you are. Understanding this creates a critical shift. Instead of blaming yourself for self-sabotage, you begin to see that your brain is simply doing its job. This awareness reduces shame, guilt, and frustration when you realize your brain is wired to protect you, not punish you. You can finally work with it instead of fighting against it. You can become the director of your brain rather than its prisoner. But awareness alone is not enough. You must begin retraining your brain to recognize the difference between threat and opportunity. Every time you face a new challenge and choose to move forward despite discomfort, you are teaching your brain that growth is safe. Every time you challenge a fear-based thought, you weaken the old survival pathways and create new, healthier ones. When you practice courage, even in small doses, you reprogram your brain to trust you, and when your brain trusts you, it no longer panics at uncertainty. This retraining begins with curiosity. Instead of reacting automatically, pause and ask yourself what your brain is trying to protect you from. Is it rejection, embarrassment, failure, or uncertainty? When you identify the fear, it loses much of its power. Next, take one small action that moves you forward. Your brain adapts through repetition, not intention. Each new action forms new circuits. Over time, your brain learns that the unknown is not fatal, that effort is not dangerous, and that discomfort is temporary. Eventually, the same brain that once sabotaged you becomes your greatest ally. Its instinct to protect you transforms into a drive to empower you, because you've taught it that growth, purpose, and possibility are safe. When your brain works for you, everything becomes easier. Your choices, your goals, your relationships, your entire life. Automatic negative thoughts, ants, are one of the most powerful hidden forces that shape your emotions, actions, and overall direction in life. They operate silently, moving through your mind so quickly that you hardly ever stop to question them. These thoughts feel real, convincing, and urgent, but most of the time they are distortions, exaggerations, or false alarms. They are mental reflexes rather than reflections of truth. Your brain produces these thoughts because it has been trained through evolution to expect danger, assume the worst, and prepare for threats, even when none exist. This negativity bias once protected early humans, but in the modern world, it often becomes a source of sabotage. When your brain automatically jumps to conclusions like you're going to fail, they don't like you, you're not capable, or something bad is going to happen, these are not logical evaluations. They are primitive survival responses triggered by uncertainty, stress, or even simple habit. You accept these thoughts because they sound like your own voice, but they are simply old neural patterns firing without your permission. The greatest problem arises when you don't question them. When anti go unchallenged, they take control. They shape your self-image, influence your decisions, and create anxiety, doubt, or fear where none is necessary. These negative thoughts can take many forms. Some are all or nothing, making you believe that if something isn't perfect, it's worthless. Others are based on mind reading, convincing you that you know what someone else is thinking about you, usually something negative. Some anti-magnify tiny problems until they feel overwhelming. Others minimize your strengths, making your accomplishments seem unimportant. The brain is creative when it comes to generating anti, and if you're not paying attention, these thought patterns can become your default reality. One of the most damaging effects of anti is how quickly they influence your emotional state. A single unchallenged negative thought can tighten your chest, raise your stress levels, trigger self-doubt, or lead you to avoid opportunities. Your brain reacts to thoughts as if they are facts. If you think I'm not safe, your brain activates a biological stress response, even if you're sitting in a calm room. If you think I can't do this, your brain reduces motivation and energy. Thoughts are not just mental events, they are chemical ones. This is why recognizing and challenging ANT is essential for emotional stability and mental strength. The first step in freeing yourself from ANT is awareness. You must learn to notice your thoughts instead of simply obeying them. When an ANT appears, pause for a moment and name it. Identify what type of distortion it might be. The act of labeling the thought creates psychological distance, giving you authority over your mind instead of letting your mind take authority over you. Once you identify the ANT, the next step is to challenge it. Ask yourself, is this thought objectively true? Is there evidence against it? Am I viewing this situation through fear or through reality? Most ANT dissolve the moment they are questioned, because they cannot survive under the light of rational thinking. Replacing ANT with more accurate, balanced thoughts is not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about seeing reality clearly. When you correct the distortion, your brain begins to rewire itself. New pathways form that are grounded in truth rather than fear. Over time, your brain learns that not every uncomfortable moment is a threat, not every mistake is a disaster, and not every challenge is proof that you're incapable. You slowly regain control of your emotional responses, your decisions, and your internal dialogue. When you master the skill of identifying and challenging ANT, you reclaim your mind from automatic, unhelpful patterns. You create room for clarity, calmness, focus, and confidence. You stop being driven by unconscious survival instincts and start living with intentional thought. This is how you begin transforming your brain into an ally rather than an obstacle. Most people try to fix their emotions, their mindset, or their motivation without ever addressing the organ that controls all three, the brain itself. Your brain is the hardware of your mind, and when the hardware is not functioning properly, the software, your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors cannot run the way you want them to. Brain health is the foundation of mental health, and yet it is the part most people overlook. When someone feels anxious, unfocused, sad, or unmotivated, they often blame their personality, their circumstances, or their willpower. But in many cases, their brain is simply struggling to operate at its best. A troubled brain makes life harder than it needs to be, turning small challenges into overwhelming obstacles and simple choices into complicated battles. When the brain is inflamed, deprived of nutrients, or exposed to toxins, it becomes harder to regulate emotions. Mood swings, irritability, and anxiety often appear because your brain cannot produce or balance the chemicals that keep you calm and steady. When the brain does not get enough sleep, focus declines, memory weakens, and decision-making becomes cloudy. When blood flow to the brain decreases because of poor diet, lack of exercise, or chronic stress, motivation drops, the prefrontal cortex becomes less active, and impulse control weakens. This is why people who are exhausted or undernourished often make poor decisions. The brain simply doesn't have the energy to support good judgment. A healthy brain allows you to stay calm under pressure, think clearly, make better choices, and bounce back from stress. An unhealthy brain does the opposite, making negative emotions more intense, reducing problem-solving ability, and amplifying self-sabotaging behaviors. When your brain is struggling, even simple tasks feel overwhelming, your goals feel out of reach, your relationships suffer because you are more reactive, more sensitive, or more withdrawn. And yet many people don't realize these patterns are not moral failures, they are signs of a brain that needs support. Nutrition is one of the most direct ways to influence brain function. Your brain needs healthy fats, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals to produce neurotransmitters and maintain stable energy. Diets high in sugar, processed foods, and inflammatory ingredients damage brain cells, increase oxidative stress, and reduce cognitive performance. What you eat either strengthens your brain or weakens it. The difference is noticeable not just in long-term health, but in your daily mood and mental clarity. Exercise is another powerful tool for brain health. Movement increases blood flow, stimulates neurogenesis, and boosts chemicals like serotonin, dopamine, and BDNF, substances that lift mood, sharpen focus, and protect neurons. Even brief daily movement can dramatically shift how your brain functions. A sedentary lifestyle does the opposite, slowing cognitive processing and increasing the risk of depression. Sleep is essential for repairing the brain, consolidating memories, and clearing out toxins. When you cut sleep, you cut your brain's ability to function. Chronic sleep deprivation makes you more emotional, more forgetful, and more prone to impulsive choices. Many people underestimate how deeply sleep affects their mental health, believing their struggles are psychological when they are actually physiological. Stress also leaves a powerful imprint on the brain. Chronic stress floods the body with cortisol, shrinking parts of the brain responsible for memory and emotional regulation. Stress makes the amygdala more reactive, meaning your brain becomes hyper, alert to danger even when no danger exists. This creates cycles of anxiety and irritability that feel impossible to escape until the stress response is addressed. When you care for your brain, you create a stable foundation for healthier emotions, stronger focus, and better habits. Brain health does not just support mental health. It determines it. When your brain works right, you work right. And when your brain struggles, so does everything else. By nurturing and strengthening the brain itself, you give yourself the greatest chance to think clearly, feel deeply, and live intentionally. You are not stuck with the brain you have, and this single truth can change the entire course of your life. For years, people believed the brain was fixed after childhood, that you were permanently shaped by your past experiences, your upbringing, or your genetics. But modern neuroscience has proven something far more hopeful. The brain is constantly rewiring itself. Every thought you think, every habit you repeat, every action you take, and every emotion you experience creates physical changes in your neural pathways. Neuroplasticity is your brain's ability to adapt, reshape, recover, and grow throughout your entire life. This means you have far more control over your future than you realize. Your brain forms connections based on repetition. Whatever you practice, you strengthen. If you practice worrying, your brain builds stronger fear circuits. If you practice gratitude, your brain strengthens pathways for calm and resilience. If you repeat self-doubt, those thoughts become your default. If you practice confidence even in small steps, your brain slowly shifts toward greater belief and courage. Neuroplasticity doesn't judge the habit, it simply reinforces whatever you feed it. This is why changing your life begins with changing what you repeatedly do. Many of your current patterns were built unconsciously. Throughout your life, your brain has been sculpted by your environment, your relationships, your experiences, and even your traumas. These old circuits influence how you react to stress, how you handle challenges, and how you see yourself. But these patterns are not permanent. When you intentionally introduce new habits, new thoughts, and new behaviors, you start to override old wiring. Every time you choose a healthier response, even if it feels small or difficult, you are weakening old circuits and strengthening new ones. Neuroplasticity thrives on consistency. Small, repeated actions are far more powerful than rare moments of intense effort. For example, a daily 5-minute meditation can create measurable changes in the brain over time. Reading a few pages each day strengthens focus and memory. Choosing not to engage with a negative thought weakens its power. Taking a short walk daily boosts brain chemicals that enhance mood and learning. These habits seem minor, but they trigger biological processes that reshape your brain one connection at a time. Another important part of neuroplasticity is challenge. The brain grows when you push it beyond its comfort zone. Learning a new skill, practicing discipline, or facing a fear activates new neural networks. When you stretch yourself, your brain adapts to support the new level of functioning. This is why growth often feels uncomfortable. You're literally asking your brain to build new pathways. The discomfort is not a sign you're failing. It's evidence that your brain is changing. Your emotional responses are also shaped by neuroplasticity. If you always react with anger, the brain strengthens anger pathways. If you practice calm breathing during stress, your brain learns to respond differently. Over time, emotional patterns that once felt automatic can be rewritten. You gain more control over how you feel, not by suppressing emotions, but by training your brain to interpret and respond to situations in healthier ways. Even trauma, which leaves deep neurological imprints, can be healed through neuroplasticity. With the right tools, therapy, mindfulness, healthy habits, supportive environments, the brain can form new connections that reduce the emotional charge of past pain. Healing is not about erasing memories, but about rewiring how your brain responds to them. The most empowering part of neuroplasticity is that your brain is always listening. What you say to yourself, what you imagine, what you practice, all of it shapes the architecture of your mind. You become the sculptor of your own brain. With patience, intention, and repetition, you can build a brain that supports your goals, strengthens your resilience, and aligns with the future you want to create. Your brain is constantly scanning for what matters most to you, and what it believes matters most is whatever you repeatedly focus on. Focus is not just a mental activity, it is a biological signal that tells your brain which neural circuits to strengthen and which ones to weaken. This means your thoughts don't simply pass through your mind, they shape it. When you focus on fear, your brain strengthens fear pathways. When you focus on problems, your brain becomes better at detecting problems. When you focus on self-doubt, your brain becomes wired for hesitation and insecurity. On the other hand, when you focus on gratitude, purpose, solutions, and possibility, your brain constructs circuits that support hope, resilience, and clarity. You become a reflection of your mental habits, because the brain literally builds itself around whatever you consistently give attention to. Most people don't realize how powerful this mechanism is. They allow their attention to drift toward negativity because it feels natural. But what feels natural is often just what has been practiced for years. If you've spent much of your life thinking about worries, failures, or flaws, your brain has built strong pathways for them. This is why negativity feels automatic. Your brain is simply following the map you've unconsciously trained it to follow. But the same mechanism that created negative patterns can create positive ones, because focus is a choice. Every moment you redirect your attention, you begin changing the architecture of your brain. The brain does not understand the difference between what is real and what is intensely focused on. If you constantly replay past mistakes, your brain reacts as if the danger is happening now, triggering stress chemicals that cloud judgment and limit creativity. If you imagine a hopeful future, your brain releases neurochemicals that increase motivation, confidence, and energy. Your focus dictates your internal chemistry. This is why two people can face similar circumstances yet have completely different responses. Each one is using a different lens, a different point of focus, and therefore a different brain chemistry. What you focus on also determines your emotional state. When your attention stays locked on what you lack, you feel dissatisfied. When you focus on comparison, you feel inferior. When you dwell on what could go wrong, you feel anxious. But when you focus on what you can control, you feel empowered. When you focus on progress, you feel encouraged. When you focus on gratitude, your brain shifts toward calmness and contentment. Emotional stability begins with intentional focus. Without directing your attention, you hand over control of your feelings to old automatic patterns. Focus also shapes your behavior. A person who constantly focuses on obstacles will hesitate, procrastinate, and avoid taking risks. A person who focuses on opportunity becomes more likely to act even when nervous. The brain follows the dominant signal, and if your dominant signal is fear, your actions will be small. If your dominant signal is purpose, your actions will be bold. This is not motivation, it is neuroscience. Training your focus is like training a muscle. At first it feels hard, especially if your brain is used to wandering into negativity. But each time you pull your attention back towards something meaningful, You strengthen that neural circuit. Over time, you will naturally start noticing solutions instead of problems, possibilities instead of limitations, progress instead of setbacks. Your brain begins working with you instead of against you because your focus is guiding it toward what supports your growth. One of the most effective ways to harness your focus is to guard what you consume. The information you allow into your mind, social media, conversations, environments, news, shapes your attention. If you surround yourself with negativity, your focus will be hijacked. But if you surround yourself with uplifting, purposeful, and growth-oriented content, your brain will begin building circuits that reflect those values. You become what you repeatedly pay attention to because focus is the sculptor of the brain. When you choose your focus intentionally, you choose who you become. A brain without direction becomes restless, distracted, and overwhelmed because it doesn't know what truly matters. But when your brain is anchored to a purpose, something extraordinary happens. Your thoughts become more organized, your decisions become clearer, and your energy becomes more focused. Purpose acts like a compass for your mind, guiding your attention toward what supports your growth and away from the habits that sabotage your progress. Without purpose, the brain defaults to survival mode, which means it becomes reactive, impulsive, and easily discouraged. With purpose, the brain enters a higher state of functioning, one defined by clarity, discipline, and resilience. Purpose gives your brain a sense of meaning, and meaning is one of the strongest drivers of human behavior. When you know why you are doing something, you gain the strength to push through discomfort, fear, and uncertainty. The brain is wired to conserve energy, avoid pain, and seek comfort, but purpose overrides these biological instincts. It tells the brain that discomfort is not danger, that hard work is not a threat, and that growth is worth the effort. Purpose transforms difficulty into determination. It turns obstacles into challenges you are willing to face. When there is a strong why, the brain naturally mobilizes energy to pursue the how. Sabotaging behaviors like procrastination, emotional eating, self-doubt, and avoidance thrive when the brain feels lost or disconnected from meaning. These behaviors offer temporary comfort, which the brain interprets as relief. But when the brain has a clear sense of purpose, these distractions lose their power. Purpose gives the brain a bigger reward, a reward that lasts. When you align your actions with something meaningful, your brain releases neurochemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine that enhance motivation, focus, and consistency. In other words, purpose fuels the brain with the chemistry of drive. Purpose also simplifies decision making. When you don't know what you want or why you're doing something, every choice feels heavy and confusing. But when your goals and values are clear, decisions become easier because the brain automatically filters options through the lens of your purpose. This reduces mental fatigue, lowers stress, and strengthens your sense of direction. A purposeful brain is a brain with fewer internal conflicts, fewer distractions, and a deeper sense of calm. Your purpose doesn't have to be something huge or grand. It can be as simple as wanting to be healthier, wanting to support your family, wanting to grow emotionally, or wanting to contribute something meaningful to the world. What matters is that your purpose resonates with you. A purpose that comes from your heart activates more of the brain's motivational centers than a purpose forced on you by others. When the purpose is yours, the brain invests itself fully. Purpose also strengthens resilience. People who understand their why recover faster from setbacks because the brain interprets the setback as part of the journey rather than a reason to quit. Instead of triggering hopelessness, the brain activates problem-solving pathways and emotional stability. Purpose becomes a buffer against stress, reducing the impact of fear and uncertainty. It reminds your brain that the struggle is part of something larger, something worthwhile, something that gives life meaning. Living with purpose does not mean you will never face challenges. It means your brain will stop treating challenges as threats to your identity and start seeing them as steps toward your vision. Purpose unifies the mind, emotions, and behavior into a single direction. It becomes the anchor that keeps you steady when life feels chaotic, and the force that propels you forward when motivation fades. When your brain knows where it's going, it stops sabotaging you and starts supporting you. It becomes disciplined without force, focused without pressure, and motivated without constant effort. Purpose is the roadmap your brain needs, and once you give it that direction, your entire inner world reorganizes itself around your highest goals and deepest values.